Hello and welcome everybody to our new episode of webcasts and podcast. Today we're going to focus on risk management for large-scale IT software implementation projects. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I have with me today Giovangabriele Tricomi. He's a managing partner of Portaltech Reply. He's also the person who brought me on board almost 8 years ago, and the person from whom I've learned a wealth of knowledge about managing and running and organizing projects. Gio, would you like to introduce yourself, say a couple of words, please?
Yeah, Kai, thank you very much. Thank you for the invite. I'm very glad to be having this conversation with you today. As you said, my name is Giovangabriele Tricomi. I go by Gio because it makes the life easier to a lot of people. Managing Director at Portaltech Reply. We are I like to say a small SI boutique with a lot of experience across the board in implementing technologies to different customers across industries. My background is technical long time ago, and then I focus on the projects and program delivery before I was handed the keys of this wonderful organization. In the past, I worked with a variety of customers here in the UK, and in some very big organizations. Some of them we work together, organizations like EasyJet, Costco, The Body Shop, P&O Ferries, to name a few. And all of them we always provided services to implement key strategic IT initiatives in order to be able to deliver value to the end users. And all of them, from my point of view, have always been very successful.
Brilliant. Thank you, Gio. And of course, if we talk about the projects that we have delivered, a really important aspect of all of these projects was risk management and stakeholder engagement. And so today I brought in Gio to talk about risk management and to talk about the key risks that can be associated with a large-scale IT solution implementation, particularly in large, complex, and corporate environments with multitude of various stakeholders, internal and external. We will talk also about effective strategies for managing and mitigating such risks. And we also want to share some insights into best practices we've applied successfully on our previous projects to make sure that we deliver on time, on budget, and in line with stakeholder expectations. Today's webcast will focus on three key areas. So first part will be we will be talking about understanding the risks. The second part, we will focus on mitigating and managing risks. And in the last part, we will talk more about engaging effectively with stakeholders and how to best manage communication to bring stakeholders in line with our initiative and ultimately make sure that we do meet their expectations when the project is delivered. Gio, we good to dive in?
Yes, Kai. I mean, absolutely ready to dive in. I hope that time will be enough because really, this is a topic that might require like hours to be fully discussed. But let's go.
Absolutely. I mean, as a follow-up, we could also offer a workshop on this for anyone who is following us. But let's try and, wrap it into a sort of 30-minute period that we set out. So let's see. Let's give it a go. So, Gio, what would you say in terms of understanding the risks and planning for risks, right, for a large IT project, especially strategic initiatives like we have been helping our customers implement over the last 20 years? What are the key things you would highlight in this context?
The key risks of any IT initiatives can be probably categorized in four main areas. So area number one is scope creeps and project management issues. What does it mean? It means that if the scope of an IT initiative is a moving target, that will have an impact on time, budgets, time and costs. And therefore it's something that always needs to be properly managed also from a project management point of view. I've seen in the past many situations where, because the scope wasn't properly defined at the beginning or managed properly during the execution of the IT program, then the IT program itself fails. And we can discuss about the meaning of failure. For me, failure means that it goes over budget, type of failure number one. It runs over time, even if it doesn't bring extra costs, but will have an impact on the ROI that has been put in place by the stakeholders for the benefit of that program and not collected at the right time. So that's an impact. So this is the meaning of failure. And the scope is always play a key role and a key responsibility. The other risk, and for the large IT initiatives, is around the integration challenges. So imagine to have an initiative whereby you are working on different components of a very complex solution. It can be like a back office to front office solution. It can be only your e-commerce solution. Think about an airline, how complex can be integrating a retailing solution, right? And if you do not manage properly the integrations across all these different components, if you're not able to to design your architecture correctly, then the risk that components will be delivered but cannot talk to each other is very high. And obviously, when this risk manifests, you will be in the case where the initiative requires more time in order to be fixed. And any fix that you do in a large program, I'm not talking about fix, but like code fix, but fixes into an architecture and a solution. Every fix you try to do at a later stage has a much bigger impact than a fix that you are doing at an early stage of the program.
And we of course, just to add here, right? We've of course seen a very large program from one of the leading airlines in Europe actually experience a kind of a showstopper, right? Because of integration issues with their ERP, right? They've built this quite extensive program that we were working with them on, right? And then eventually the program had to grind to a halt because certain integration patterns were not properly planned and properly executed, right?
Absolutely, Kai, and that's exactly that's the reason why I always think that the integration has to be in the list of things you want to focus since the very beginning. Now, it's not only defining an API, and we can discuss about what are the strategies to put in place in order to reduce the risk reduce the probability the risk will manifest. But certainly you need to consider that as an area where failures might happen. The third element that's the third risk that needs to be considered that is becoming more and more important and playing a very central role in the success of initiatives is around data security and privacy. Especially the last 10 years with the GDPR definition in Europe, and I think in the US it's called CCPA or something similar. The data security has become one of the major elements of risk management. If we do not consider an IT program just like the time we spend in order to develop something and bring it to life, but we look at the life cycle of a solution that is being designed and put in place, then the security is what we call an NFR, like a non-functional requirement, that has a much longer lifespan and therefore needs to be managed over a longer period of time. I mean, if I only focus on 2023, there have been major data breaches on IT solutions. I think probably for me, one of the worst was the Shield Healthcare, which is an healthcare provider. They had a data breach in 2023 where more than 2 million records were stolen. And records means people information, health issues information. There was another organization I was reading a few months ago. It's called MOVEit. It's a infrastructure and solution provider for exchanging data and information, like data transfer. And their data breach was one of the worst, 60 million records, but an estimation of loss and cost to recover that is higher than 10 billion, and is still growing. So you see what is the impact of not managing the security of your data and the privacy rules properly during the design and the implementation of an IT program. I mean, and we can mention many others. I think the British Airways had a data security issue last year. Bank of America, you think that banks are the ones that are always, how can I say, that are targeted quite a lot, but they are well protected. But the reality is that the data breach can happen in any situation or case.
Of course, and of course, it bears not only the credibility risk, right? Not only damage to the brand, but also comes with subsequent legal proceedings potentially against the business, right? So not only poor data security can result in, the deprecation of loyalty of the customers towards the brand or a company, right? But also subsequently legal charges can be brought against the business that can run into millions of pounds or euros in proceedings, right? So it is a very important area.
Correct. You're absolutely right. From a financial point of view, it's probably the risk that can have the highest impact, and it can itself define the future of an organization, because we've seen organizations failing and no longer existing because of data breaches.
Absolutely.
Fourth area of risk, that's probably it makes me smile because it's a tough one, and it's about vendor management and vendor performances. So in a complex scenario, in a complex IT landscape where organizations are working with multiple vendors that contribute to the implementation of a solution, to the success of that solution, being able to managing the vendors so that they can deliver according to what we call the SLAs is absolutely important. And as well as it is important to selecting the right vendor in advance because they can be, they are key to the success in the same way they are key to the failure. If you look at it as a chain and you've got a failing ring within your chain, then you can't use the chain anymore. And in some cases, there is a ripple effect where one of your suppliers is not providing the quality that is expected at the time that is expected, and obviously will have an impact to the rest of the chain, and therefore your program might slip by months, if not years. So I think that risk again is quite important, and again needs to be carefully managed, and a framework to operate needs to be designed.
And it's actually, I think this is, you're talking about a very recent experience that we had with one of our flagship accounts, right, where another vendor is involved, and unfortunately we see them delaying on their side of implementation for a different project, right, on the ERP side. But unfortunately, the commerce solution is tied into that timeline, and we actually see our own project being delayed, right, by a significant amount of time. And as a result, of course, the team, needs to be dismantled and then re-ramped up again later in the year. So it's a very sort of tangible, practical, and very recent experience for us, isn't it, Gio?
Yes, it is. I mean, some of these risks are things that we really we managed to touch with our own hands. I mean, situations where we've been into somehow directly or indirectly. And the case that you mentioned, it's probably one of the most recent where we end up in being there, sitting, waiting for another supplier to deliver what they have to deliver so that we can continue. And so I think that as an organization, being able to manage these situations, being able to really select the right supplier is absolutely key.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you, Gio. And then, since we're talking about understanding the risks and these four categories that you've outlined, would you say, areas of communication gaps or cultural differences or contractual complexities, and these are kind of secondary risks, and sometimes people pay a little bit less attention to these. But I think in our experience, we have really seen how important communication, right? How important building rapport with the cultural, with our stakeholders or peers who are of different cultural background, right? That can come into the picture and also strongly influence performance of the co-join team of the vendor and the client, right? Or contractual complexity. Is there anything you want to add around those areas?
There are some underlying risks, apart from the ones that I mentioned. And I think that the way we operate as a supplier and an organization operates as a customer is a big area of risk. You're absolutely right when you mention the role of communication within a program. And there have been cases where I've noticed that communication wasn't there and suppliers were not transparent to the customers and vice versa. Because, I mean, when we talk about communication and transparency, it's a two-way thing. It's not just a communication from the provider into the customer. There are informations that are important to the success of an IT program needs to come from the customer because these will help a supplier to adapt and organize. So in that, if the communication is not properly, if a communication framework is not properly designed and put in place and adopted, then the risk of failure for the program is massive. It's also about the type of, you mentioned the contract. The contract it really goes down into the supplier risk because you're vetting, you have to vet your suppliers and you need to select your suppliers based on how they can operate in a complex environment. We as Portaltech, as Supply in general, happen to operates with customers, but there are other suppliers. Suppliers that in other cases can be our competitors in other initiatives. But one of our strengths as an organization is always to find the best way to operate and collaborate with other suppliers because we always focus on our customer. We always focus on the success of our customers. Their success is our success. I know it sounds silly, but that's the reality. So we always do our best to make sure that this initiative will be a successful one because as an SI, will give us the opportunity to continue, will create a track record of success that we can present to future customers saying, hey, we know how to do these things. So we always avoid what I call the suppliers war that I've seen happening where organizations are focusing on blaming each other rather than collaborating with each other. So I think that for the customer, defining contracts that help them protect during a complex IT implementation initiative, it's absolutely important. Defining the right SLAs so that you also define the responsibilities of the different parties in the success of your program is paramount. The exercise that you do at the beginning of vetting your suppliers and seeing who has a track record of collaborative successes is, again, something that will require the right amount of time and needs to be done properly. Otherwise, risks of failing become super high.
Absolutely. Thank you. And that actually, that takes us nicely into our next part, I think, of our webcast today. So mitigating and managing risks, right? So we obviously have a whole section of our Portaltech hybrid agile delivery framework that focuses on risk management. We've developed some, tried and tested approaches and trackers that we use for risk management, identification, assessment, mitigation, planning. What would you say in this context, in this area? What kind of key points would you like to highlight to our followers when it comes to, identification, assessment, mitigation, planning for risks on a program that we would run?
I mean, first of all, the risk assessment, the risk management is a science, and it cannot be underestimated because it's about understanding the complexity of your IT initiative and clearly define the risks of this initiative, the most important parts of your initiative itself. And it's where you start building the success versus the failure. So making sure that you know how to assess what you want to do and identify the most important risks is the first area where you as an organization need to put your effort. And finding a partner that can help you doing that exercise and having those risks properly documented is key. The second part, once you have defined your risks and documented that, then you need to come out with your strategy to mitigate the risks. It's all about mitigation. And if we pick up one of the four risks we were discussing earlier, like we're talking about scope creep, for example, and the project management. How do you mitigate that? Well, it's about defining scope. It's about defining the boundaries of the scope. It's about defining on a development project, what are your acceptance criteria for the scope that you have defined? It's about having a delivery framework that focuses on agile rather than waterfall, because that will allow you to control better the scope. It's about having a change control process in place so that when scope changes, because the scope does change, it's something that sometimes we forgot, that the scope by definition has to change because the more you develop, the more you realize things you didn't know at the beginning. But only if you have a process in place to manage these changes accordingly, understanding the impact of the changes across the board on all the different components that are part of your IT initiatives. And again, communicating these changes in the right way, that is where you are really managing the risk and mitigating the possible impacts that will come if that risk manifests. So, and this goes around having a strong delivery framework that allows you to manage the delivery properly. When we look into the other elements, like we talk about data security and we talk about the integration challenges. Again, you need to understand what the risk is and document it properly. Something that we as an organization do quite a lot is to have architecture and governance in place on the large IT programs, because that will give the ability to design better and assess the impacts of architectural decisions in the overall solution and making the right technical decisions to support the initiative rather than taking the wrong technical decisions. The way it works, we can talk about the details, but the reality is that having an architectural governance alongside with your delivery governance will help you reduce the risk of integration issues. And the same will happen with the data security. So the data governance and the compliance framework has to be brought into your IT program at early stage and not at the late stage. Because as I said, fixing a problem at the end is much more expensive than fixing it at the beginning. And on the data, I'm very passionate about the data. I've seen IT solutions where data was not taken care of properly. So whatever was the data in the back office, it was surfaced to the front office and managed into the front office. I think that understanding the scope of your data segregating the information of your data, let's assume the customer records. I mean, you don't need all the customer records to flow from the back office into the front office. You only need part of that. And that's a way to mitigate the impacts of a data breach that it happens on your front end. Because the data breaches most likely are happening on the front end, not on the back office. So understanding the data, the meaning of the data, what is useful, how the data should flow among the different systems, reducing the information about data, the data information that you are flowing, that becomes part of your strategy.
And of course, if we talk about all of these aspects, it's really important that, back to your point, choosing the right partner who has seen this kind of scale of implementations, right? Who has the professional judgment and experience to draw upon of where things can go wrong, right? And is able to highlight these potential situations and is able to identify these risks, however remote they are, right? It's about really collecting all the possible areas and all the, identifying potential points of failure. And that, of course, usually comes much easier to somebody who has done a series of large scale implementations like the ones we're talking about, and really can help you highlight or draw your attention to this kind of areas, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Gary. I mean, the theory is there for everybody. There are plenty of books and manuals that you can read in order to understand what's the stance of risk management. And if you read a book, you might consider yourself as an expert. The reality is that many of these things are learned in the practice. And as an organization, if I look into Portaltech, today we know things that we didn't know 10 years ago when I joined Portaltech, because obviously we had to face a complexity situation. When I mentioned about GDPR and data security, there wasn't the same level of attention that also from a regulatory point of view 10 years ago compared to today. So these things are things that you learn by doing your job. And yes, everybody learns by their own mistakes. So also that process of looking into the things that didn't go right and making lesson learned and making sure that that becomes now your knowledge to support customers better in the future. It's all about this type of learning, which the theory helps, but with not practical activities, that it stays where it is. And everybody has the theory. I mean, the difference is not made by the theory. So everybody has a book.
Amazing. This is really, really insightful. Thank you, Gio. So, and then I guess, when it comes to managing risks and working together with a customer on risk management and risk identification and mitigation, right? It kind of takes us into the stakeholder engagement, right? And keeping in touch with our stakeholders and making them aware of risks and working with them together, because there's certain risks that we as a vendor are not in control of, but nonetheless, we always make sure that we track those risks and that we work with our customer stakeholders to address these risks or monitor these risks. So that's the part 3 of our webcast today. What kind of messages would you like to leave our followers with in this context?
Well, I guess the first message is that in the last years, I've seen a major shift in the industry, a shift that I'm very happy with, and it's a shift of relationship between customers and SI, so solution providers. In the past, the relationship was really a relationship like customers and providers. Reduce communication, reduce interactions. As a customer, I tell you what I want, and it's your responsibility to deliver. And it's like an 80s, 90s type of approach, very, very much waterfall oriented. In the past, in the recent years, this type of relationship has changed. So we move toward a one team approach where customers and the solution system integrator, that is now called their partner, are working together, sharing the same goals and the same objectives. Obviously, contracts are still regulating the relationship, but if we step up from a second, if we step aside from what a contract is stating and the SLAs and the commercials and all these things, it's about creating that culture. There is a shared culture between customers and partners. And you mentioned communication. For me, communication is something that we need to repeat over and over again. Only way to create this partnership between two organizations, where one is a customer and the other one is a service provider, is by making sure that there is constant, transparent and open communications among the entities. Because otherwise, we can easily end up in situations where initiatives fail because informations are not shared. So I'm really a big supporter of this. I remember in one of the big initiatives we had 2018, 2017. It was at the beginning of your time at Portaltech or thereabouts. And with this big customer, which I don't want to name, it's not important, the customer per se, but with this big customer, at some point, we requested the customer to come to our office with a large team, more than 80 people, central London. It was amazing, a lot of energies and vibes. So we asked the customer to come to our office and spend some time with us. And they came and they told us the importance of the program for them, what they wanted to achieve, why they were investing all that money, why they were working with us, why they trusted us, why they believe in what we were doing. And that was a massive boost in, let's call it productivity to our team. But it was not the productivity. The team felt energized because the team felt like we are part of something much bigger. It's not about the line of codes that we are writing. It's not about the test case we are executing. It's about what the customer is going to do over the next few years. And he's doing that thanks to the solution that I'm putting together. So every team member suddenly they started feeling more important. And that came with definitely more velocity, better quality. Everybody was passionate about what they were doing. So yes, that's the type of relationship that you always want to build with your customers. And that's the type of communication you want to have with them.
Absolutely. I remember that event actually. It was really, I also noticed such a dramatic change in engagement and association with this common goal, right, and the vision of the customer. And we had a really big team at that time, right? I think we had 3 teams working on a core application, a 4th team working on a satellite application for the customer. And really, I think we had about 40 people or 50 people in total on that engagement. And it really helped us, I think, as leaders of Portaltech Reply, to really, show this to the team and get their buy-in. So absolutely, I can second that. Gio, this has been great and really amazing. And thank you very much for sharing your experience. So here we're going to share also our contact details. As always, please follow us on our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to our updates on LinkedIn. All the contact information should be on your screen right now. Please connect with us. We are always really keen to hear from you at any point in time, be that any questions around any of our webcasts or any other areas you might be interested to hear about in the context of project delivery or customer experience development and any kind of best practices that we have developed over the course of the last 20 years working with large enterprise customers. Gio, I would like to thank you for your time today. It's been really insightful, and I hope our followers will find it really interesting to follow this webcast. Are there any last words you'd like to share before we conclude?
First of all, it's for me to thank you, Kai. It's been a very good chat. I really enjoyed this 30 minutes chat. Now, I think that probably the only thing that I like to say that's more for organizations that are struggling in successfully delivering their IT programs. I mean, do not underestimate the power of a proper risk management approach. There are people who can help. Obviously, Kai is one of them, probably one of the best. But definitely start your program by really looking into the possible risks, because if you know them and you know how to control them, then you increase your success rates dramatically.
Absolutely. Amazing. Gio, thank you so much. Dear followers, thank you so much for taking the time to follow us as well. Please stay tuned for the future webcast and podcast releases. Please subscribe to our channel, comment, get in touch with us. Please follow us on LinkedIn. There is a lot of exciting and interesting material that we will be releasing over the next months. And we're looking forward to hear back from you, and please stay in touch. Thank you very much, everyone.